Hello, guys. This is my leak. This is the My Taught You podcast. And I know you guys are like, she is on a roll with all of these guests on the podcast. One thing I've learned that I'm forgetting to do, my website is mytaughtyou.com. I do have a few products up there. I'm working on a couple things, and I will be back at the end of the year with some fun stuff for you guys. Today on the podcast, I have the only human being on the planet that I will loan books to. So I am insanely overprotective about my books. They are like my baby. My library is like my nursery. And it's the one thing that am able to set boundaries with. I do not loan out my books. The only person that I loan and exchange books with is Toni Martin, who is on the show with us today. And we're going to talk all kinds of books.
I'm so honored. I'm so honored to be that one person.
Because you and Toni, you can give them a bit of your background. I met Toni. So Toni, I don't know if you know this, but the rule for guests on my podcast is that it has to be people that I know. You know, I've met them because I think it just makes for a better conversation. But I met Toni almost 8 years ago, the first week that I moved to Atlanta, right?
Yep.
We were working. What was it? It was like a
Black Public Relations Society. I think it was
Beepers. Yes. Black Public Relations Society. I forget what I was talking about, but I don't really remember how we connected, but we have been friends ever since. And in my early days of living in Atlanta and kind of just trying to figure it out, Toni would always come through with some of the most clutch book ideas. And so she put together this list of questions about books that we are going to go through and have some super fun conversation about. So you should have had your paper handy before you started this, but if you haven't gotten it, go get your paper because we are going to drop dime on so many books, and people who write me and email me, this is your podcast. So, Toni, before we go, give them a little bit of background on like your story, who you are, what you do, and why you are the ultimate bookworm.
Why I'm a book person. So, and just kind of, more about how you and I met. I was volunteering for the summit and you were speaking at the summit on public relations. And I think we were like in a green room or something and started talking. And one thing I always tell people is like, you're the person who, when you say, hey, we should do drinks, you actually call and say, what are you doing right now? Let's go get drinks. And that's something that I've learned from you and that I truly admire and I still work on trying to do. So that's how we became friends, because you followed through on kind of what you said. So
thank you. Try to be a person of my word, and I was new, and I think one thing, I think that's naturally my personality, but I think the one thing that I knew is that I was like, I am new to Atlanta. I had moved here to be in a relationship, but I was like, I have to create my own friend circle ASAP. And something about your energy. I always tease Toni because she is a bleeding heart. Somebody could like have a gun, have shot someone, and she would be like,
well,
person might, but maybe we don't know why, and I'm like, oh gosh. So Toni is one of my bright side friends. This is somebody who sees the bright side of damn near everything. So when people talk about curating your friend circle, you definitely need that sunny side up friend, that friend who will take any situation and put some glitter on it and make it bright. So I appreciate that in our friendship. And why are you such a bookworm, my dear?
So I think a lot of people know me as a writer. I've always written. I went to school, got my degree in English. I love writing.
And we can tell everybody she writes the Curlbox mag card. So if you get Curlbox,
no, it's a secret.
It is, but you help, you assist. It is not a secret. So I am a slow writer. Toni's a fast writer, and she helps in the writing of the Curlbox mag cards.
I'll also say this, part of what I do is ghostwriting, and you actually were responsible for giving me my first ghostwriting book project.
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah, that was something I had said. I was like, I want to ghostwrite. And then you hit me up and you were like, hey, I have these clients and they need a book ghostwritten. I'm like, oh my God.
I'm
So
actually doing it.
yeah, yeah. So you definitely got me started on that path. So I guess I'm a writer. I do a bunch of stuff, but writing is something I come back to all the time. And
Hmm.
my father, would take me to the main branch library in Detroit when I was teeny tiny, and it's this huge marble brass building with just all this art and the old school card catalogs, and I just fell in love, with that building and taking home a stack of books, and
Yes.
it's never left me. And so even to this day, when I go to the library, I'm just amazed. I'm like, there are all these books here for free.
I know.
Can you believe
It's
it?
all this information, all of these thoughts, all of these ideas, all of this imagination. Like,
Free.
it's free.
It's
Yes.
amazing. So
Okay.
that's
So,
how
all
I
right.
fell in love with the whole book thing.
Okay, so we're not going to bore you guys with all of this. We are going to get into Toni's first question. Book you give away most often. Toni, what's the book you give away most often?
Mine is it's a book called Earn What You Deserve by an author
Okay.
named Gerald Mundis. And he talks about just really the idea for a lot of people who don't make the money that they should, what's called an under earner. He
Mm,
goes into how to reverse that thinking and then actual actionable steps into how to earn what you deserve. Some of those steps are spiritual. And so I know
wow.
quite a few folks like that who don't even know that they're not earning to their full potential or that they have the
Hmm.
capacity to do better. And so
Okay.
I give that book away. I think I have like a few extra copies, like always on hand right now. And I'm like,
Right.
how many
You're
copies of
like,
this book do I have?
right, I know. And just for you guys who are listening, Toni, I'm going to make sure that you email me your list. I'll put these together and I'll answer these questions. I'll put it in the notes. So if you go to mytachi.com, I'm going to put all of these books in the notes for this podcast. So if you're in the car driving, don't worry. Um, the book that I give away most often is The Mastery of Love. Well,
Really?
but let me tell you something. I have two books. The book that I used to always give away was The Mastery of Love by Don Miguel Ruiz. For those of you who are huge book fans or don't know Don Miguel Ruiz, he also wrote The Four Agreements. And what I love about Don Miguel in The Mastery of Love is that he examines the fear-based beliefs and assumptions that undermine love and lead to suffering and drama in our relationships. And prior to being able to afford therapy, prior to really understanding therapy, I would say that like this book helped me with like self-rejection and like fear and love and all of these things. And because I am a nerd, I told Toni before we started this podcast, I have like my favorite quote from all these books. So my favorite quote from The Mastery of Love is, "You have the power to create. Your power is so strong that whatever you believe comes true. You create yourself, whatever you believe you are. You are the way you are because that is the way you believe about yourself. Your whole reality, everything you believe is your creation. You have the same power as any other human in the world. The main difference between you and someone else is how you apply your power, what you create with your power. You may be similar to others in many ways, but no one in the whole world lives her life the way you do." And I think that
Church.
yes, that book had me like every time I saw someone looking broken, looking like they might, I'm like, here you go. And it's a really short sort of like read. It's not hard to read at all. And there's this wonderful prayer at the end called the Prayer for Self-Love, which you can Google, which I just email it to friends when I see that they're down. The book that I have given away more often than not is Me Before You by Jojo Moyes. Did I give you that book?
You did. You did.
I, I must have bought like 20 copies of that book. I gave it to my accountant. Jojo, Me Before You is fiction, but it is a story about a quadriplegic who wants to die. I'm not going to give it away. They made a movie about it. I don't have my favorite quote from that book because I knew I was going to take up too much with that other one. But Me Before You by Jojo Moyes is the one that I've been giving away lately. The next question Toni had is the book that changed your life. Toni, what book changed your life?
So for me, and I'll just say this, I'm a nonfiction person. I mean,
Same.
I write and I read fiction, but I'm also like hardcore nonfiction. And
Mm-hmm.
the book for me was Secrets of Six Figure Women by Barbara Stanny.
I have that.
That's a good one. She opened my eyes to kind of, going back to that theme of, can you really be somebody who you didn't think you could be? And
Yeah,
that book is filled with nothing but success stories of women who, and six figures is an arbitrary number,
it
but
is.
essentially people who made more of themselves. And for her, it was very relevant to me because, she was a journalist, she was a writer, and everybody knows, she says this, everybody knows,
Mm-hmm.
writers don't make any money. So why
Right.
would I have that expectation for myself? But she talks about as she went forward and interviewed these women who were earning this six-figure salary, how her earnings increased, and pretty much how she just kind of revamped her life. So that book just really kind of set me on a path to doing more, being more. So it definitely changed my life.
As I'm listening to us go over our books, it is so crazy how people, if you just listen to the books that we're saying we're reading, you can figure out what type of people we are. You can see what our issues are. And it's that thing of like how they say, like, never date a guy that doesn't have a bookshelf, because that's how you figure. To me, it's like you walk in someone's house, you see their bookshelf, and you see who they are.
Yeah. Or if they don't have
Okay.
a bookshelf, which is
If they don't have a bookshelf, you're like, I don't know about this. The book that changed my life was Maximize the Moment, God's Action Plan for Your Life by T.D. Jakes. And like I said, I think I read this when I was around 20 or 21. This is when self-help wasn't a big thing. This is when people were like, just go to church. And what I dug about this is that a summary that I found online, it says, here the bishop wants readers to consider the brevity of their lives and make something of themselves. And I think that that was so important to me, is that a lot of us are going through life acting and feeling like we got all the time in the world. And it's just like, really consider the brevity. Brevity is brief, how brief your life is going to be, and how you have to stop putting off things until tomorrow. And what I dug about this book, Maximize the Moment, is that while I was going to church at the time, not overly religious, but I did appreciate church, is that this was an actual, like, Bishop Jakes put actionable items in this book. It was like, you've gone to church and what to do. People will tell you what's wrong and how you are doing things wrong, but it's like, how do I do the right thing? And I felt like that was the first thing that I read in my early 20s that has some action item. So I can tell you hands down that Maximize the Moment, God's Action Plan for Your Life by T.D. Jakes saved my life, and it is still on my bookshelf today. The highlighting has faded, but but the red ink that I wrote in it is still there. And so it's always interesting to go back and see like what mattered to you back then.
Yeah.
The next question you had is the books that made you the most money.
Yeah, I really want to know this from you. So what is that?
The
I know
books,
everybody wants to know.
this is what's crazy. The books that made me the most money, I got from you. The books that made me the most money are both by Michelle Goodman, The Anti 9 to 5 Guide, and My So-Called Freelance Life. I still remember the day that you came over my house to tell me about these crazy finds that you had. You were like, oh my God, she has figured it out. Because so many people don't want to have a 9 to 5, but she gives all the steps of like how to transition out of a 9 to 5 into your so-called freelance life. And at the time, you remember, I couldn't find a job in Atlanta. So I was like, I was anti 9 to 5 because I couldn't find one. So, okay, how do I transition out of this? I felt like it helped me transition out of the 9 to 5 mindset, because to this day, I still work 9 to 5. My office is open from 8 to 5, and I work from the time I wake up to the time I go to bed. But it helped me to understand a sort of like working a life work mindset, and she gives you tips on contracts and your LLC and just how to schedule your day, because once you start freelancing, it's like had gotten to a point where I was just working nonstop because I was at home. And so the two books that I believe made me the most money by changing my mindset were those two books that I think you loaned me, and then I think I bought them.
I love that. I love that. Well, I think for me, mine is along the same lines. It's a book called The Well-Fed Writer by Peter Bowerman, who
I remember you talking about this.
yeah, he actually lives here in Atlanta, and I got to meet him when I moved down.
Uh-huh.
But I read that maybe a little bit after college, and that book talks about being a commercial kind of copywriter and really approaching the business of writing as an actual business.
Mm-hmm.
So the same kind of stuff you were talking about with the anti 9 to 5 guide and my so-called freelance life. But instead of that kind of, I want to be a writer and I want to write books. And, it tells you, hey, this is how you pitch articles. This is how you get assignments from editors. This is how you work with small businesses
Nice.
to do their PR. This is, it's very methodical.
Okay.
And so that book actually helped me to put on the hat of I'm a professional writer.
Okay.
And I got, assignments from that. Like it kind of set the whole tone for my career. And even like, as you said, I'm still doing copywriting to this day for, Curlbox or a few other clients. Even though I'm not a writer, but it still set me up.
Yeah.
That book, definitely. I'm still earning money from it.
The well-fed writer.
The Well-Fed Writer.
Awesome. Okay. The book you wish you wrote.
That's such a hard question. And let me go back. So the other book that made me the most money for folks who, I had a second one, for people who are not freelancers, because we talked about freelance, is Salary Tutor by Jim Hopkinson. Mm-hmm. And that book actually got me $5,000 extra on my last salary negotiation.
I remember you telling me that. You were like, I have my notes, like I did it. And you negotiated. So many people are afraid to negotiate, especially in the beginning. It's like, maybe I'll get in and then I'll wait, but you were telling me that. So wait, what was it again?
It's called Salary Tutor. And he gives you scripts. He talks about the mindset. I mean, he breaks it down. I wrote him. I was like, Jim, thanks a lot. Because
you got your girl some dough. Right. And that's awesome. So many people ask me about salary and how to negotiate. And I've only had, and I don't know if people know this, I have only had one formal job outside of college. So I don't really know. I don't really know how to negotiate salary because I just never have. And I work because I don't have a salary. I do have a salary. The company pays me, but I essentially, as an entrepreneur, I'm in a situation where I only eat what I kill, So it's like, all right, I got to go out and hunt. I have nothing guaranteed to me. It's not about like, oh, this is guaranteed and then I'm getting extra. It's literally like every single thing I have to go out and kill. So I'm glad you share that, because I know a lot of people will find the Salary Tutor helpful. The book you wish you wrote, I will tell you what my book is.
What is that?
The book I wish I wrote was Jen Sincero, You Are a Badass. I do, because that's the first sort of quote unquote self-help book that I felt like I could relate to. And I really read it because I was like, I want to write a book like this. Like when I saw that, I was like, this is the book that I would want to write. The book is Jen Sincero, You Are a Badass, How to Stop Doubting Your Greatness and Start Living an Awesome Life. And I remember I read it like, I want to say 3 years ago, and it was not popular at the time, but it is very popular now. And I see it in every airport, on every bestseller list. I've never gone into any airport and not seen this book. 2 quotes that I will pull from it. 2 favorite quotes. First one, you are perfect. To think anything less is as pointless as a river thinking that it's got too many curves, or that it moves too slowly, or that its rapids are too rapid. Says who? You're on a journey with no defined beginning, middle, or end. There are no wrong twists or turns. There is just the beginning. And your job is to be as you can be. This is why you're here. To shy away from who you truly are would leave the world you-less. You are the only you there is and ever will be. I repeat, you are the only you there is and ever will be. Do not deny the world its one and only chance to bask in your brilliance. And so I guess as people get to know us through the books that we really love, is like, I feel like, I mean, and it probably is, I have sought out a lot of affirmation. And so even my boo says my love language is words of affirmation. I think that these are the kind of conversations that I have to have with myself. I like to hear these kinds of things. And the second quote was, you are responsible for what you say and do. You are not responsible for whether or not people freak out about it. Period. So that's the book I wish that I wrote. And it's just so badass. Like, she killed it. And it's like, if I ever write a book, it will be somewhat probably along those lines of like, girl, you got this. Stop tripping.
In summary, that's what it would be.
In summary, yes.
So, of course, for me, of course, I probably have 50 books I wish I wrote. As every English major, I'm sure.
Right.
But I would say most recently, Tiny Beautiful Things by Cheryl. Of course, I'm actually obsessed with advice columns. Yes. I'd love to be an advice column.
Did I give you Tiny Beautiful Things?
Yeah. You did.
Because that was the other book that I was giving away in between The Mastery of Love and Jojo Moyes' You Before Me, Me Before You.
Yeah, okay. You did. And that one, I love that she doesn't necessarily tell people what to do. She tells them more how to think and how to be. Yes. And she does that through stories from her own life. And then she has that extra added layer of being, this awesome writer. So all of those things weave together. Yes. And the subject matter, it's all about humanity. And it's relative to everybody. It's a situation everybody can recognize themselves in, all the questions. So combining those three things is just amazing that she did that. Fiction book I wish I wrote is definitely Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. Okay. She, in that book, it's folksy, but it's also another story about just humanity in general. And then she has these just gorgeous lines. One of my favorites is, there were years that asked questions and years that answered.
Oh God. Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
And so I'm like, oh God, if I could have written that, and it's simple, you can get it. It's not overblown. I don't like, overblown books that have all this, highfalutin vocabulary. We don't need that. Yeah. I just need a simple story that's so well written that you don't notice the writing.
Wow.
But yeah, those are my couple. Just two of the many I wish I had written.
Tiny Beautiful Things is on my list also as we continue to talk about this, but it wasn't the book that I wish that I wrote. And for those of you that aren't familiar, Tiny Beautiful Things is by Cheryl Strayed, who I am definitely obsessed with. She wrote this book about bravery. It's like a little quote book.
I read that On Bravery. I think it's On Bravery.
Okay, maybe that's it. But that's something that you can like keep on your nightstand, and like every night you can read it. Because I'm a Cheryl fan. I listen to her Dear Sugar podcast. I am Cheryl Strayed's. I am her fan.
Stand for Cheryl.
Yes, I stand for Cheryl. I stand for the podcast and the books. So you have books you reread on a yearly basis, and I only have one.
What is that?
Book that I reread on a yearly basis is The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. Mm-hmm. I am a huge Robert Greene fan. I was interviewed on a podcast probably a week ago, and I went down to NPR to tape it, and I thought because I was at NPR, I was like, if anyone knows Robert Greene, if anybody can connect me and I can interview Robert Greene, I will cash out for the rest of my life. Like, I will be done, because I'm such a huge Robert Greene fan with an E on the end. And of course, I got 4 quotes, because I pull this out annually. I bought The 48 Laws of Power the summer before I went to go intern in New York at Unilever. And I was just like, remember when Tower Records sold books? Yeah. Went to Tower Records, 21 maybe. I got the book and I was like, I'm taking this with me to New York for this internship because I got to figure out how to like thug this game of life out. Like I have to figure out how to be, you know, in the boardroom, if you will. So, well, some quotes that I love. When you show yourself to the world and display your talents, you naturally stir all kinds of resentment, envy, and other manifestations of insecurity. You cannot spend your life worrying about the petty feelings of others. That is something that I felt like helped me immensely, because the minute that you start to show that you are definitely about that life, people start attacking you from the space of their insecurities, not because you're doing anything to them, but because they never had the guts to do that. And I think the hardest part is that sometimes it's friends, sometimes it's family, but it's usually the people who are closest to you. And that's what shocks and surprises you the most. You know, strangers, they do that. Like you'll see constant Instagram trolls or like Twitter thugs or whatever doing this, but that was like, okay, to be 21 years old and to understand that when you show yourself to the world and display your talents, you are going to stir up resentment, envy, and manifestations of insecurity. That helps you process it differently when people are basically talking trash to you, you know?
I love that.
Another one is, if you are unsure of a course of action, do not attempt it. Your doubts and hesitations will infect your execution. Timidity is dangerous. Better to enter with boldness. Any mistakes you commit through audacity are easily corrected with more audacity. You know, it's like, if you scared, don't even try it. But if you come through bold and popping your collar, if you make a mistake, pop your collar even harder and it's fixed. I love that. And then I just have two really short ones. Everyone admires the bold. No one honors the timid. This is super important. And it's like, this is something that you need to write down. Like everybody needs to write this down right now. Write this down. Keep your friends for friendship, but work with the skilled and competent. Okay. Keep your friends for friendship, but work with the skilled and competent. And so you and I are friends, but I know, but this is what's so crazy about this is what's so crazy about this pod. You are the only friend that I will work with, which is crazy, but you are insanely competent, you know, but you are hands down the only person that was my friend first that works with me now.
So keep your friends for friendship, but work with the skilled and competent, unless they're Toni and they're both. Okay.
Right. Skilled, competent, and friendly. That's because you're a bleeding heart.
And it's so funny. That's your book that I, you know, like I said, you recommended it. I tried to get it on Kindle, and it's like 9 million.
This is not a Kindle book. This is not a Kindle. This is similar to the Bible in the sense that like it's a long, deep, detailed read, something you're probably gonna keep on your nightstand for the rest of your life.
Yeah. So for anybody out there who's like, oh, I can download, you need to get that.
No. Yeah. You need to physically buy this book. This is not a Kindle book. What is the book the one that you reread on a yearly basis?
Yeah, every year I try to read All the Joy You Can Stand by Debrina Jackson Gandy.
Okay.
And it's 101 sacred principles for strengthening yourself or something along those lines. But it's just really little tiny kind of snippets. And this book is like a kind of intimate conversation with a girlfriend who's just extremely wise and who's lived life and who's very spiritually grounded. She talks about all the things that we as women struggle with in terms of relationships, family, career, managing our energy, being called to something higher while still replenishing ourselves. And it's just a touchstone for me every year to kind of check in and say, you know, where am I off base? Where am I kind of depleted? Where am I not addressing certain issues? And it's a really, you know, quick and easy read. And she also has lots of examples from her life. I love books that have examples from that person's life.
Okay. So I think this is a book that you recommended to me that I looked. Yeah. I don't think I got it, or I may have it, but I don't think I read it.
Yeah, it's just one, and it's so many different things as I come back every year, certain things, and I'm sure with the 48 Laws of Power, certain things stand out to you now that didn't 2 years ago, 5 years ago. So it's one of those things you keep going back to and getting something new out of it. So I love that book.
Okay.
Love it.
Awesome. Next one you had is, okay, and we're going to, this was the because I had to make so many notes. I have 7 pages of notes for this podcast, and this is page 4. You have your go-to book that you recommend for, and then we're going to go through them: relationships, cooking, financial, and business. So we are going to start with relationships.
Okay.
My relationship book recommendations are The Mastery of Love if they are in a good relationship. It's called a breakup because it's broken if they are in right post breakup. And Tiny Beautiful Things if they are in a dead end relationship. So I have a couple quotes. Mastery of Love I already talked about because it starts with self-love, and I think self-love is really helpful if you're in a healthy relationship. Before breakups, it's called a breakup because it's broken, which I read when I went through a breakup. I read a lot of breakup books. He says it's a Greg Barrett and his now wife wrote it together. And he says, people come together and move apart. It's the age-old ebb and flow of relationships. Some are shorter journeys and others were meant for a lifetime. That goes for friendships as well. And I just think that we have such a hard time believing that everything is not meant for a lifetime. And I shared this on my Snapchat the other night that I was like, my friend Amy, you've met Amy.
Yes.
Amy always says that some people are there for the whole book and other people are just chapters. Some people are literally intended for 1 to 10, chapters of your life. So they weren't intended to be a character for the entire story. And then another quote from that book that I like is, alone also means available for someone outstanding. Right. So just because you're single, I saw on Facebook today, somebody posted, it's hard being single. And it took everything in me not to comment because I can be very sort of like, it's hard being homeless. It's hard being hungry. It's hard being a whole bunch of things, but it's like, come on. I mean, I understand that relationships are great, but it is not hard. It's uncomfortable. It's, whatever, but it is not hard. So for a relationship, oh, wait. And then I have my book for if you are in a dead end relationship is Tiny Beautiful Things, the one that you wish that you wrote.
Yes.
And 2 quotes, and I have 2 quotes that 3 quotes, because that was what's crazy is that Tiny Beautiful Things was literally my favorite book for maybe 2 years in a row. Like I would read a bunch of other books and it would be like, year 1, what's your favorite book? Tiny Beautiful Things. Year 2, I'd read more books. What's your favorite book? Tiny Beautiful Things. Cheryl Strayed, she says, you cannot convince people to love you. This is an absolute rule. No one will ever give you love because you want him or her to give it. Real love moves freely in both directions. Do not waste your time on anything else. Do not. And so, I love me some Cheryl. Another one, and this is pretty long, so I may cut it off. And she says, don't do what you know on a gut level to be the wrong thing to do. Don't stay when you know you should go or go when you know you should stay. Don't fight when you should hold steady and hold steady when you should fight. Don't focus on the short-term fun instead of the long-term fallout. Don't surrender all your joy. Don't surrender all your joy for an idea you used to have about yourself that isn't true anymore. Don't seek joy at all costs. I know it's hard to know what to do when you have a conflicting set of emotions and desires, but it's not as hard as we pretend it is. Saying it's hard is ultimately a justification to do whatever seems like the easiest thing to do. Have the affair, stay at the horrible job, end a friendship over a slight, loving someone who treats you terribly. I don't think there's a single dumbass thing I've done in my adult life that I didn't know was a dumbass thing to do while I was doing it, even when I justified it to myself as I did every damn time. The truest part of me knew I was doing the wrong thing, always. As the years pass, I'm learning how to better trust my gut and not do the wrong thing. But every so often, I get a harsh reminder that I've still got work to do.
I just love everything she has about
She,
relationships, whether single. There's the one she
yes,
has about the woman who has this idealized notion of marriage, and her sister, she finds out that her and her husband have both had affairs.
yes,
Got an excellent answer for that. There's a woman who loves somebody, or she had a friend who slept with somebody else. And I remember a quote from that. And she's like, don't love the person who doesn't love you. There's so many things to be tortured by, so many torturous things in this life. And I'm like, she's a poet. I love it. Love her.
awesome. Okay. And then my favorite Tiny Beautiful Things quote: "We are all entitled to our opinions and religious beliefs, but we are not entitled to make shit up and then use the shit we made up to oppress other people." That's why I love Cheryl, because Cheryl is not here for the games.
She can do like the hardcore, and she can do like the literary.
Yes. So, your favorite relationship books?
I have an author who's like kind of my relationship author. Her name is Susan Page.
Okay.
And for single people, she has a book. I love the title. If I'm so wonderful, why am I still single?
If I'm so wonderful.
Right. If I'm so wonderful, why am I still single? And then she has a marriage book called How One of You Can Bring the Two of You Together. And her work deals primarily with the personal responsibility that we need to take in whatever situation we find ourselves in, be it single or in an unhappy marriage.
Okay.
And she gives you kind of that work to do and kind of how to approach that. For the If I'm So Wonderful, Why Am I Still Single? She really like takes it there in terms of, how you have to leave the kind of better than nothing, no strings attached relationships alone so that you can make space for, what you really say you want. So she's hardcore.
Okay.
And so I have a lot of, kind of married but unhappy friends. And I'm always, this, I'm like a huge relationship person. I'm always going to recommend a book and some therapy before you.
Okay. All right. And is that your book?
Yep.
Okay. Favorite cookbooks. Everybody knows that I am a super huge cookbook fan.
You are. So I probably can guess what yours are. At least one of yours.
Okay. I think everybody can.
Yes. Is it Skinny Taste?
You know it.
So I am kind of getting my cooking. I used to cook a lot and I stopped for a period. Now I'm getting back. But ones that I always go to are actually Patti LaBelle's book, The LaBelle Cuisine.
Stop it.
Yeah. No. And these are things people don't know about me. So if like I'm trying to do like a special occasion, I'm definitely gonna do her mac and cheese. She's got like her sides. I love her side recipes. Just kind of everyday stuff. I like anything by Mark Bittman, who wrote the minimalist column for the New York Times Magazine. And he's got kind of that approach. Like, how you go to a wonderful restaurant and they've only seasoned things with like kosher salt and fresh black pepper and it tastes
Which is how I season things in my house.
Yes, but it's like it's elevated. It doesn't have to have 50 different sauces and all that preparation. So that's his approach. So those are kind of some of my go-tos.
Okay. My favorite cookbooks are Skinny Taste, obviously. And she has a book that's coming out, and I don't know when it's coming out, but I already pre-ordered it. Like, I think maybe 4 months ago, she was like, my book is coming out in a year, and I pre-ordered it. Like, and text all my friends that I know are huge Skinny Taste fans, and it's called Fast and Slow, and she does like quick meals, and then she has her slow cooker meals, which I love. So Skinny Taste is hands down my go-to cookbook. I also really enjoy Epicurious. I get a lot of my, I guess, flavor ideas from Epicurious. I have the Epicurious app on my phone. I kind of, it's any random day and I'm coming home from work and I'm going to go to the grocery store, I will go to the app. They always have suggestions for like what you can cook with the current season's vegetables. So, it might be fall veggies, which are root veggies, and then it may be summer veggies. And a lot of times it's like the the veggies that are currently in season are the cheapest, and it's like, what can I make with these? And they have this thing, their fork system, and so this cookbook is their 4-fork cookbook, meaning all the recipes that were rated 4 forks. And I can tell you that I have never, ever, ever in my life made a 4-fork Epicurious recipe and it been bad. Like
Wow.
never. So even just 2 nights ago, I made a corn lobster tomato salad that I got from
I saw that.
the Epicurious app. Amazing. Like, I mean, it made no sense how good it was. Another cookbook that I really love is True Food, and there's a True Food restaurant here in Atlanta. It's a chain, but it is a based on the anti-inflammatory diet. And I don't know if people know this, but I have a cyst on my spine, which causes me a ton of back pain. And I would say a combination of 2 books, cooking from 2 different books, True Food and Whole30. When I started doing Whole30, I noticed that I stopped taking the like naproxen medication for my back.
Wow.
And so Whole30 is like no sugar, no grains, it's really pared down, but I have most recently cut the grains in my diet. So I don't eat a lot of grains anymore. And ever since I gave up grains, and I probably say artificial sugar from like the cream in my coffee. So I drink my coffee black now and I don't eat a lot of grains. I have not taken my back medication since I had the Whole30 cookbook.
Wow.
And the final cookbook that I have is Oh, She Glows, and that's a vegan cookbook. And that's just me stretching myself to try to do meatless meals on occasion because my body needs protein. But I try to do meatless meals from time to time, and Oh, She Glows kills it. She has this one warm root veggie salad that'll blow your mind. I've made it like 8 to 10 times this year.
Oh, wow.
Super good. So those are my cookbooks. I have a ton. I went to my shelf when you said it. I was like, what are the top 5 that I can...
I had to know because I'm like, you are a super cooker. I know the Skinny Taste. We were actually together at True Fruit Kitchen when you got that cookbook.
Yes. I'm like, I'll take it.
yeah, absolutely. So I'm good to know the Epicurious app. I'm going to check that out.
Get it's banging. You're going to, and it will put together a grocery list for you and everything. So it'll be like, check off the stuff you have at home. They'll suggest what you probably have at home. Things like salt and pepper. It's amazing. And it's free, I think.
Love it.
Favorite financial books, which was it was crazy that I didn't have a ton of favorite financial books.
Yeah, that was hard too. I just have a couple. I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi. That's a classic one. So he's this young kid. He's been around forever. He had that popular blog, and people always think it's a scheme. But really what he's teaching you is things like how to negotiate your credit card rates, how to set up, kind of a system for paying your bills, that type of thing. And then the other one is Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey.
Okay.
Super, super classic. And Dave is hardcore, no debt of whatsoever, any kind, no credit cards. He's the guy who's really big on doing a debt snowball, paying down your debts from smallest to largest, really focusing on one thing. And he has these baby steps. That's his system.
Okay.
So he kind of walks you through step 1, save up $1,000 for a starter emergency fund. Step 2, pay off all your debts, smallest to largest. Step 3, finish out your 3 to 6 month emergency fund. And so forth and so on. And so he also has like the longest running talk radio show. And so people call in, who are following his system every day. And so it's just like a whole cult, really. And so it's a great kind of financial book.
I heard that I'm not a Dave Ramsey fan or follower, but I heard that he has a Tesla like me and says that over time the Tesla will eventually pay for itself.
Really? That's interesting. But the other thing is he's like, he buys his car. So I'm curious to know that he buys Tesla outright. I'm sure he did because he would.
That's his get.
Yeah. He'd be crucified if he financed that car.
That's interesting. I don't know. I heard this, and this is something that I heard from someone else, that he did have one, and people were to be chastising him because it was an expensive car, but he felt like over time it would pay for him. It would pay for itself. And I have to say that the Tesla was the first car that I ever financed. It's the first car that I ever bought outright, and it's the first car. So I have a car now, which is interesting, but I just didn't want to pay for it outright. I felt like there were other things I can do with my money.
I love it.
My favorite financial, so I'm not a huge financial book fan, but I will tell you the two that I think had the most impact on my life. First one was Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert
Yeah,
Kiyosaki.
classic. That's a good one.
That's a good one. I read that one the same summer that I went to go intern in New York, and there was a game and all that stuff. And so, two quotes from Rich Dad Poor Dad. In school, we learn that mistakes are bad and we are punished for making them. Yet, if you look at the way humans are designed to learn, we learn by making mistakes. We learn to walk by falling down. If we never fell down, we would never walk. And again, not so much about money, but the mindset.
Mm-hmm.
So many people are afraid to make mistakes and they want to get everything perfect, not really realizing that like you learn from your mistakes. And then my favorite quote that probably maybe even of all time, winners are not afraid of losing, but losers are. Failure is a part of the process of success. People who avoid failure also avoid success. Yes.
Wow.
So that was like, that helped me understand sort of like the money mindset, the kind of mindset one must have to be rich. And just the first finance book I think I really sort of applied to my life was Susie Orman's Money Book for the Young, Fabulous, and Broke.
Yeah. That's
when I was 25, I was like, okay.
That's a classic. I remember I bought that for, I think one of my cousins.
Did you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it's helpful. I think it's helpful if you just don't have if you lack like a general understanding of money. Alrighty. What was the next book? What was the next question?
Business. Go to business.
Oh God, this was so hard because you know that like the majority of my bookshelf is business. I probably have hundreds of business books, but I'm gonna let you go first because my list is long, girl.
Well, mine is easy. I had the anti 9-to-5 guide in my so-called freelance life.
Okay.
Just because I think those cover kind of anybody wanting to start something. But more so, I think depending on what it is that you want to start, I recommend kind of looking for the go-to book within that industry.
Okay.
Also, the 4-hour 4-hour work week. That's classic business, kind of breaking away from, kind of that 9-to-5 lifestyle as well. So love those.
Okay. So I would probably say that business books are my joy. I read a lot of business books. I have a long list, but I'm going to quote some of them and power through the rest. Simon Sinek, Leaders Eat Last and Start with Why. He has a really great TED Talk on Start with Why, which I think people will enjoy. But two of my favorite quotes from Leaders Eat Last, because I've had some conversations recently to young women who want to be leaders, and I think understanding leadership, people think that it's about like being in charge and being the boss and being a dictator and listen to me and I know what I'm talking about and I'm in charge because I know the most. And it's really like, he says, this is what a leader is. If your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader. The other thing he says is the true price of leadership is the willingness to place the needs of others above your own. Great leaders truly care about those they are privileged to lead and understand that the true cost of the leadership privilege comes at the expense of self-interest. So that's one of my favorite business books that I think that people who are that want to be entrepreneurs and lead businesses need to understand about leadership. Another book that I really love is by Daniel Pink called To Sell is Human. I think so many times people are afraid to sell their stuff, afraid to sell themselves, and he lets you understand that selling is human. A quote he says is that anytime you're tempted to upsell someone else, stop what you're doing and upserve instead. So he shows you how, like, yes, you can sell things because to sell is human, but you should sell in service. Another one of my favorite business books is Timothy Ferriss, The 4-Hour Work Week. I also enjoy his podcast. I think that all of us hoped and wish for a 4-hour work week. It is not real. I think he knows it's not real. I don't believe that he works 4 hours a week, but it was nice. He says, you are the average of the 5 people you associate with most. So do not underestimate the effects of your pessimistic, unambitious, or disorganized friends. If someone isn't making you stronger, they're making you weaker. Another one is Sheryl Sandberg, Lean In, Zig Ziglar, Secrets of Closing the Sale, Kathy Black, Basic Black, which I really love. I really love that book, and we read that in my office. Another book is what is another book that I really love? I love The Personal Touch by Terry Williams, Phil Knight's Shoe Dog, Frances Cole Jones's How to Wow is incredible. She said, like, that's the book that taught me a lot. She says, never walk into your boss's office with a problem. Walk in with the problem and two potential solutions. What else do we have? I have Lawrence G. Bolt, Zen and the Art of Making a Living. I really love that book. I recommend it to a lot of young people who have no idea what they want to do. It helps you kind of carve out your career path. Phil Jackson's 11 Rings, Malcolm Gladwell, The Tipping Point. The tipping point is the magic moment when an idea, trend, or social behavior crosses a threshold, tips, and spreads like wildfire. And I read that obviously before I started Curlbox to try to understand how do you create something that spreads like wildfire. He also says there is a simple way to package information that, under the right circumstances, can make it irresistible. All you have to do is find it. Jack Welch winning. Jack Welch I'm a fan of his. He has a book out with his wife most recently, but he says, when you were made a leader, you weren't given a crown. You were given the responsibility to bring out the best in others. And then the final book, because I told you I can go business books all day long. I picked like 10 or 12. Poe Bronson, What Should I Do with My Life? I read it right after I graduated college when you're sort of unsure about what you want to do. And he says, interests evolve into hobbies or volunteer work, which grow into passions. It takes time, more time than anyone imagines. I used to want to change the world. Now I'm open to letting it change me.
Wow.
So those are, and I could have told you about 55 more of my favorite business books just in this moment, but I was like, oh God, I can go all day. So we'll go to the next question, which is author you read anything they write. Toni, what is the author that you read like they can do no wrong in your eyes?
So there's an author, her name is Maeve Binchy, and she is an Irish fiction author, and she's kind of in the vein of Jojo Moyes, kind of before Jojo was on the scene. And she wrote the book that became the movie Circle of Friends with Minnie Driver. But her books, they deal with kind of small town Irish life. It's so weird that that's, the person I read everything. But I love her book. She talks about just relationships and family and just growing up and all of that. So she's actually deceased now, but I've read all of her short story collections, all of her novels. So anything Maeve Binchy has written, I have read. Love her.
I don't know. Okay. I'm getting a little bit of are you close to the microphone? A little bit, maybe. I don't know, but it was doubling up. I just wanted to make sure because okay. I don't edit these. And so I want people to have good quality. Okay. So that's anything she writes, she can do no wrong.
Yep.
Anything else?
No, other people, but that's my main one where I've read everything.
Okay. Author that I will read anything they write. Robert Greene, who wrote the 48 Laws of Power and The Art of Seduction and The Strategies of War. Anything he writes. He also wrote a book with 50 Cent. Anything he writes, I'm reading. I follow him on Twitter. I retweet him as often as I can. And Paulo Coelho. Yeah. Paulo, The Alchemist, 11 Minutes. Paulo can do no wrong in my eyes. So the next book that you have that we disagree on liking, what are the books that we disagree on? I know which one it is.
You probably don't. So the one that we disagree on liking is actually You Are a Badass. That's why I laugh so much.
Boo.
I've tried so many times to read that book and I don't get it. I don't get it. So it's so amazing that you're like, that's the book I would write. I'm like, oh Lord, well, I would read it if you wrote something in that vein, but I can't get into it.
Okay. I feel like, and I'm almost embarrassed for you to talk about the books that you like that I can't stand. And I truly am embarrassed for you because you like, I think you gave me a book from Tariq Nasheed or
Yes.
something. And I was like, girl, if you don't get this all the way up out of my house, I'm embarrassed at the fact that you spent money on this. So don't like anything. And then I remember that book that I bought, and I don't know why I bought it. I think because Oprah promoted this, and I said, ain't no way in hell Oprah read this book. The book Tyrese and Rev Run Manology.
Oh yeah. I don't.
I was
Yeah.
that was some bullshit. Like I was so mad about that book because I was like, they are putting out some like, this is what it is. I don't like books that it. How is it about manology, but it's written to women? Why don't you? But no, no. So I don't even want to talk about it no more. That's how much I don't like it.
Got it.
And you were like, yeah, I'll read it.
Yeah, I do. And the Tariq one is so interesting. And when you told me, you were like, I wanted to throw it across the room. And I was like, really? Like, at what point? Like, where in this book? Because I like it. So I just couldn't believe that it provoked, like, such a strong reaction in you. But I think that's cool. You know, like I said, we're both readers. And it's going to be something that the other person I just don't get it.
Got it. We have who gave you the gift of reading? I wrote, I'm really not sure. I just think I was born this way. I worked in the library in the 7th grade before school started. My brother went to the high school and he had to be there super early. So I just started. I mean, I was reading before then, but like working in that library for 2 hours before school every morning for 2 years really really changed my love for books. And I think I learned about all types of books that I never knew existed just by receiving them in the library.
I didn't know you worked in a library. That's cool.
I did. I loved it. It's my favorite thing. I didn't get paid, but I loved it.
That is so cute. I think, it's definitely my father, and I talked about that earlier. Just he's a huge, like, his library is insanely ridiculous. So my father is like the person wherever he goes, he has a book. Um, he taught me kind of how to look at the copyright and just like the Library of Congress information. Like he is truly a bibliophile. And so that directly comes from him.
Got it. You have. How do you choose books? I choose books from friends like you, people who send me books. I love browsing the bookstore, books of people that I admire are reading. Like that's how I got into Paulo Coelho. Was like Common was saying that he had read the Zahir, and I read the Zahir, and then I fell in love with Paulo Coelho. And I also take Amazon recommendations. Like Amazon's like, if you bought this, you'd love these, and so that's how I choose books.
For me, and I was curious, I'm like, how do you choose your books? Definitely recommendations. Definitely, I think whenever you recommend something, I typically pick it up. Although a lot of the stuff you said today, I'm like, oh, let me write that down. So yeah, if people recommend something, I'm probably on the library website checking it out before they finish telling me about it. Nonfiction, is definitely whatever I'm needing at that point in my life. So if it's a self-help book for something I'm struggling with or some business venture, all of that directs me to kind of those books. And then fiction, I just kind of get on a kick. So sometimes I'll be like on a historical fiction kick. Sometimes I'm like on a murder mystery kick. And so just kind of Amazon or the library, just kind of one author to another, ping ponging and kind of going through those kicks.
Got it. Okay. Storage, you said. What do you keep? What do you toss? I keep everything for the most part. I probably purge my books every 15 years, so I don't throw away anything.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. It seems like you have a curated collection. It doesn't seem like you have like just an out of control collection.
Wow. Yeah. I'm still getting feedback doubling up. I don't know if you're doing something different, maybe closer back, but just want to be sure it's not. I hope that you guys listening aren't hearing this. But okay. What about you?
I didn't have a system. I just went through a move and I just really had to be super ruthless. So most fiction I toss unless they're like just super classics. I don't reread them or I can get them from the library. And then my reference books, anything that has like old information, like PR books that don't have social media info, I'll ditch those. But stuff that I know are classics that I use, like we talked about, you come back and you get different stuff. Like that's kind of my guideline on what to keep.
Gotcha. Do you write in them? Take notes of your takeaways? I highlight in my books, and I write on the sides. And if it's super serious, then I throw a flag on it. What about you?
I don't. I would like to. Sometimes I'll highlight, but I'm not consistent with any of that. I've tried to start taking notes in my phone of key takeaways, but I'm not consistent with that either. So, no.
And then what am I reading right now at this point? I am currently reading The Perfect Find by Tia Williams, which is fiction. And I don't really read a ton of fiction typically, but Tia worked at Essence back in the day, and now I think she works at Estee Lauder, but she was the first person to ever break the story of Curlbox happening in the media. And so I bought like 5 copies of her book to support. And then when I interviewed Lovey, probably like 3-4 weeks ago, she was saying that she read it over one weekend and was unable to put it down. And I now know why. I think I'm on like chapter 19, 20. And as soon as I'm done with this with you, I'm going to go back and finish that book.
Love it. She also had another book before, like her first novel. That was super good too. Love that. I'm reading right now Difficult Conversations, How to Discuss What Matters Most.
Yep. We read that in my office.
Yeah, I've heard it was a recommendation from a coworker, and she says her copy is dog-eared, has all these notes in it, and that it's a great resource for personal conversations, professional conversations. So that's what I'm reading.
Yeah, we read that in the office, and I think it is super important. So I definitely get it. I didn't dog ear it because I think sometimes once you've gone to therapy, like that's pretty much what it is all about, is how to have difficult conversations typically. Well, Toni, my friend, thank you so much for coming on and having this super awesome book conversation with me. Where can people find you on social media? What's your Instagram?
So I'm Urban Lux Life, Luxe. And that's where you can see kind of one of my side projects, which is all of my stationery line that has my fashion
awesome.
illustrations.
Thank you guys so much.